They stood there, knowing exactly what it would cost. In a kingdom where no one says no, they refused. And in that moment, everything changed. Of powerful Bible stories like this, subscribe now, because this story only gets deeper.
Long before the lion's den, before the miracles, before the entire kingdom watched in shock, there was a young man, a man taken from everything he knew, his home, his people, his identity. This is where the story begins. The kingdom of Judah had fallen. Invaders from Babylon swept through the land, taking treasures, destroying what once stood strong. And among the captives were young men, chosen carefully, not just anyone, but the strongest, the wisest, the most promising. Among them was a young man named Daniel. But before we go on, if you love powerful Bible stories like this, make sure you subscribe now, because this story only gets more intense from here. He wasn't just taken from his home, he was taken into a completely different world, a foreign land, a powerful empire, a place where everything was different. The language, the culture, the beliefs, even their names were changed. Daniel and his friends were given new identities, new names, new training. They were to serve the king of Babylon, to think like Babylonians, to live like Babylonians, to forget who they were. But there was one thing: Daniel would not give up. The king ordered that these young men be fed from the royal table, rich food, fine wine, the best of the best. It looked like a reward, but it came with a cost. Because for Daniel, this wasn't just food. It went against everything he believed, everything he stood for, everything he knew was right. And in that moment, he had a choice: blend in or stand firm. Daniel made his decision, quietly, without rebellion, without noise, but with conviction. He went to the official in charge and made a request. Not a demand, a request. Please, allow us not to defile ourselves. It was a dangerous move. Refusing the king's provision could mean punishment, even death. The official was afraid. If the king noticed they looked weaker, it would cost him his life. But Daniel didn't argue. He didn't force it. Instead, he proposed a test. Give us 10 days. Let us eat only vegetables and drink water. Then compare us. 10 days. That was all. It didn't make sense. No rich food, no royal diet, just simple meals. But Daniel trusted something greater, and so the test began. Day after day, while others feasted, Daniel and his friends stayed disciplined, focused, committed. No shortcuts, no compromise. And after 10 days, the moment of truth came. They were examined, compared, watched closely. And what happened next changed everything. They looked healthier, stronger, better nourished than all the others. It didn't make sense, but it was undeniable. From that moment, everything shifted. They were allowed to continue. Their choice, their conviction, had made a difference. And it didn't stop there. God gave them knowledge, understanding, wisdom beyond their years. And Daniel was given something even more: the ability to understand visions and dreams. In a foreign land, under pressure, in a system designed to change him, Daniel stood firm. Not loudly, not aggressively, but faithfully. And that faith was only the beginning. Because soon, a moment would come that would shake the entire kingdom. A dream, a king, and a test no one could solve.
The pressure didn't come all at once. It crept in, slowly. A command here, a compromise there, until one moment changed everything. After 10 days, everyone expected them to fail, but they didn't. In fact, it's something about them felt different. Not obvious at first, but noticeable, and the officials couldn't ignore it. So instead of stopping them, they allowed it. But that decision would lead to something bigger. What started as a small decision began to open doors. The same people who doubted them started watching them closely, because there was something unusual, something they couldn't explain. And Daniel knew. This was only the beginning. Stay with this story, because what God is about to do next is different. Day after day, they continued learning the same lessons, the same training, the same environment, but somehow they weren't the same. Others were learning, but Daniel and his friends were understanding deeply, quickly, almost effortlessly, and people began to notice. It wasn't just intelligence. It wasn't just discipline. There was something else, something unseen, something that gave them an edge no one could match. And for Daniel, it went even further. He began to understand things others couldn't. Visions, dreams, meanings hidden beneath the surface. But no one knew yet how important that would become. At first, it was quiet. A few glances, a few whispers. Why are they different? How are they doing this? No one had answers, but everyone was watching. Then the time came. The training was over. And now, they would stand before the king, not as students, but as candidates. And this test was different. The room was silent, heavy. One by one, they stepped forward, each one hoping to impress, to be chosen, to stand out. But something was off. Most of them weren't ready. The questions weren't simple. They went deeper, revealing more than knowledge, revealing understanding. And many struggled. Hesitation, confusion, pressure. Then it was Daniel's turn. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He stood there, calm, as if he already knew something others didn't. The king asked, a question that silenced the room. Difficult, unexpected, the kind that exposes everything. And for a moment, everything paused. Then Daniel spoke, clearly, confidently, not guessing, not struggling, but understanding. And as he spoke, something shifted. The king leaned forward, not because he had to, but because something caught his attention. This wasn't normal. This wasn't trained behavior. There was something else, something deeper. Then it became obvious. When compared to the others, the difference couldn't be hidden. It wasn't small. It wasn't close. It was clear. In every matter, every question, every challenge, they stood out. Not slightly, not occasionally, but consistently, far beyond the rest. The king didn't hesitate. He had seen enough. There was no doubt anymore. So he made a decision, one that would change their lives. They were chosen, not just to serve, but to stand close, to advise, to be part of something greater. And just like that, everything changed. But elevation comes with something else. Attention. And not all attention is good. People were watching now, not with curiosity, but with concern. Because something was about to happen. Something no one could predict. Something that would shake the entire kingdom. And suddenly, being chosen wouldn't feel like an advantage. Because soon, the king would have a dream, and no one would be able to explain it. And it did. It didn't stay quiet for long. What started as whispers slowly became something louder, heavier, more noticeable. The attention didn't fade, it grew. And the suspicion became real. Because in Babylon, nothing unusual goes unnoticed for long. At first, it felt like a favor. Everything seemed to be working in their favor. They had been chosen, they had been trained, and when the time came, they stood out. Not just a little, but clearly. Their appearance, their understanding, their composure. It was obvious, even the king saw it. But favor has a way of attracting attention. And attention doesn't always come with good intentions. Because when people can't explain your growth, they begin to question it. It started subtly. A look here, a glance there. Nothing obvious, nothing confrontational, just observation. But the more they were observed, the more noticeable they became. Every action was seen, every word was heard, every decision was noted. And not just by one person, but by many. Because once attention starts, it spreads. People talk. People compare. People analyze. Why them? What makes them different? How did they rise so quickly? And the more those questions were asked, the less comfortable things became. Because the truth is, being different sounds good until you're surrounded by people who are not. If you're enjoying this story and you want to see how it unfolds, make sure you subscribe and stay with this journey. Daniel and his friends weren't loud. They weren't trying to prove anything. They simply lived differently. They carried themselves differently. They made decisions differently. And in a system like Babylon, that alone was enough to stand out. But standing out comes with pressure, because people don't always celebrate what they don't understand. Sometimes they resist it. Sometimes they question it. And sometimes they feel threatened by it. The atmosphere had changed. You could feel it. The looks were no longer curious. They were calculated. The silence was no longer normal. It was intentional. Something was building. Not loudly, but steadily. And Daniel could sense it. He didn't need anyone to say it. He didn't need confirmation. He understood. This wasn't just about standing out anymore. This was about what comes next. Because when you stand firm long enough, you will be tested. And this is where it becomes personal, not external, not public, but internal. Because before any real test happens, there is always a moment of decision, a quiet moment, where no one else is watching, where no one else is speaking, where it's just you and what you believe. Daniel knew that moment was coming, not because he saw the future, but because he understood the pattern. Pressure always leads to a decision, and soon that moment would arrive, a moment that would demand a choice, not small, not easy, but clear, compromise or stand firm, and what they choose would change everything. The whispers, the looks, the attention, it had all led to this moment, a moment they could no longer avoid. Because in Babylon, nothing stays hidden forever, and standing out always comes at a cost. The king had noticed them, not just once, but again and again. Their wisdom, their discipline, their difference, it had set them apart. But what made them stand out was now the very thing putting them in danger. Being different is not admired for long. It is questioned, watched, tested. And now, the test had come. A decree was made, clear, undeniable, unavoidable. Everyone that was expected to conform, to follow the system, to do what was required. No exceptions, no excuses. And suddenly, what had once been quiet conviction became a public decision. This was no longer personal. It was visible. It was risky. It was dangerous. Because now, they had to choose to blend in or to stand firm. And the truth is, That choice is never easy. Not when everything is at stake. Not when the pressure is real. Because standing firm sounds powerful, until you are the one standing alone. And in that moment, they understood something. This was not just about them. It was about what they believed, what they stood for, and what they were willing to lose. The room felt different, heavier, tense. Eyes were watching, waiting, expecting. Would they give in? Would they finally break? Would they choose safety over conviction? If you've been following this story so far, stay with me. Because what happens next is even more intense than this moment. But something in them refused to move. Not out of pride, not out of stubbornness, but out of something deeper. Something unshakable. Faith. And in that moment, their silence spoke louder than words. They would not bow. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. And that decision changed everything. Because the moment you refuse to conform, you become a problem. And in Babylon, problems are dealt quickly. The atmosphere shifted from curiosity to tension, from tension to confrontation. Because now, it was no longer about observation. It was about action. The test had revealed them, and now, the consequences would follow. What they didn't know was that this moment was bigger than them, much bigger. Sometimes in the greatest tests are not meant to break you. They are meant to reveal something greater, something unseen, something powerful, something undeniable. And this was only the beginning. The story doesn't end here. It gets deeper, more dangerous, more powerful,